The sun had long risen over the Andes, casting golden light across the vast empire of the Inca. But in the heart of Cusco, the capital, shadows loomed. A kingdom once ruled by a single sovereign was now torn apart by war. Two brothers, sons of the same father, stood on opposite sides of a brutal conflict that would determine the fate of an empire. One brother, Huascar, claimed the throne by right of birth. The other, Atahualpa, seized power with the strength of his army and the loyalty of seasoned generals. Their struggle was not just a battle for rule. It was a war that would leave the Inca vulnerable to an even greater threat. As the civil war raged, neither brother could foresee that their fight would pave the way for foreign conquerors. The kingdom stood divided, its people caught between two warring factions, unaware that their greatest test was yet to come. The roots of the conflict stretched deep into the traditions and politics of the Inca Empire. By custom, the emperor's chosen heir was not always his eldest son, but rather the most capable one, often from a favored wife. This system, meant to ensure strong leadership, instead created dangerous rivalries. When Emperor Huayna Capac died suddenly, some say from disease, others whisper of poison, the empire faced a crisis. His sons, Huascar and Atahualpa, both laid claim to the throne. Huascar, born to a noble Cusco queen, saw himself as the rightful heir. Atahualpa, raised in the northern city of Quito, commanded powerful armies and loyal generals. With no clear successor, the empire fractured. What began as political tension soon erupted into open war, setting the stage for a brutal struggle that would reshape the future of the Andes. Huascar and Atahualpa were more than rivals. They were symbols of opposing forces within the empire. Huascar, proud and ambitious, ruled from Cusco with the backing of the traditional nobility. He believed in the old ways, in the sacred lineage that tied the emperor to the gods. Atahualpa, however, was a man of action, hardened by years spent in the distant province of Quito. There, he built a formidable military force, earning the loyalty of warriors who had fought alongside his late father. Their differences extended beyond strategy and upbringing. They reflected deeper divisions within the empire. The southern regions, including Cusco, supported Huascar, while the north rallied behind Atahualpa. Each brother gathered allies, amassed weapons, and prepared for war. The empire stood on the brink of chaos, and the first battles would soon reveal which brother had the strength to rule. The war began not with a grand declaration, but with skirmishes along the borders of their territories. Huascar, determined to assert his authority, sent messengers demanding Atahualpa's submission. When none came, he mobilized his forces and marched northward. The first major confrontation took place near Tumebamba, a city caught between the two factions. Here, Atahualpa's general, Chalcuchimac, led a swift and brutal assault, turning the city into a battlefield of fire and blood. Though Huascar's forces tried to hold their ground, they were outmaneuvered. The loss of Tumebamba was a warning. Atahualpa's army was stronger, more disciplined, and ready for war. Meanwhile, Huascar's own commander struggled to match the speed and coordination of their enemies. The war had begun in earnest, and already the balance of power was shifting. As the war dragged on, both sides suffered heavy losses. But Atahualpa's advantage became clearer with each passing battle. His generals, particularly Chalcuchimac and Quisquis, proved to be brilliant tacticians, using the terrain to their benefit and striking when least expected. The decisive moment came at the Battle of Chimborazo, where Atahualpa's forces decisively crushed Huascar's army. Outnumbered and outmaneuvered, Huascar barely escaped capture. The defeat shattered morale among his followers, many of whom began to question his leadership. Meanwhile, Atahualpa pressed forward, seizing key cities and cutting off supply lines. The momentum of the war had shifted irrevocably. With each victory, Atahualpa drew closer to Cusco, the heart of the empire, and the final confrontation loomed on the horizon. Atahualpa's march toward Cusco was relentless. With each victory, his forces grew stronger, swelling with defectors from Huáscar's crumbling army. The final clash came at the outskirts of the capital, where Huáscar made his last stand. Despite his desperate efforts, his troops were no match for Atahualpa's seasoned warriors. The battle was fierce, but the outcome was never in doubt. Atahualpa's forces broke through the city's defenses, setting fire to parts of Cusco in their advance. Huáscar was captured in the chaos, dragged before his victorious brother in chains. The war was over. Atahualpa had won. Yet, even as he stood victorious, the wounds of the civil war ran deep. The empire was exhausted, its people weary of bloodshed. The new emperor had secured his throne, but at a terrible cost. With Huáscar defeated and imprisoned, Atahualpa turned his attention to consolidating power. He executed those who had opposed him, ensuring that dissent would not rise again so easily. His generals, rewarded for their loyalty, were placed in positions of authority across the empire. Yet, despite his triumph, cracks remained beneath the surface. The war had drained resources, left cities in ruins, and sown distrust among the people. Many still mourned the fallen, and whispers of rebellion stirred in the provinces. Atahualpa sought to restore order, but the scars of the civil war would not heal quickly. Worse still, the empire was weakened at the worst possible moment. Unbeknownst to Atahualpa, a new danger approached from across the sea, one that would soon test the strength of his rule like never before. Even as Atahualpa solidified his rule, strange rumors reached the empire's coastal settlements. Foreign ships had been sighted far to the west, unlike anything seen before. Some dismissed these stories as myths, but others recalled ancient prophecies, tales of pale-skinned men who would come from the sea to bring great change. These warnings had long been ignored, but now they carried new weight. Spanish explorers had already reached the edges of the known world, and whispers of their conquests in the north spread fear among traders and messengers. Atahualpa, confident in his recent victories, paid little heed. He had just conquered his own land. How could a handful of foreigners pose any real threat? But history would prove otherwise. The arrival of the Spaniards would mark the beginning of a new chapter, one that neither brother could have foreseen.
Atahualpa's reign was short-lived. Just weeks after his victory over Huáscar, he received word that the foreign invaders had landed in the north. Dismissing them as minor threats, he continued his journey southward, preparing for a triumphant return to Cusco. But the Spaniards, led by Francisco Pizarro, had other plans. They knew of the civil war and understood the empire's weakened state. Seizing the opportunity, Pizarro arranged a meeting with Atahualpa under the guise of diplomacy. On November 16, 1532, the two forces met at Cajamarca. As the emperor arrived with a small entourage, the Spaniards launched a surprise attack. The Inca guards were unprepared, and within moments, chaos erupted. Atahualpa was captured, and his generals, thrown into confusion, could do nothing to stop the massacre. The empire, already fractured by war, now faced its greatest challenge yet. With Atahualpa imprisoned, the Inca Empire descended into further chaos. The emperor, though held captive, still commanded loyalty from many of his generals. In a desperate attempt to regain freedom, he offered an enormous ransom, enough gold and silver to fill a room. For months, the Spaniards waited as the Inca delivered the wealth they demanded. But Pizarro had no intention of honoring the agreement. In July 1533, fearing that Atahualpa might rally his forces against them, the Spaniards executed him. His death marked the end of centralized Inca rule. Without a strong leader, the empire crumbled. Some factions resisted the invaders, launching guerrilla campaigns in the mountains. Others submitted, hoping for mercy. But the days of the great Inca civilization were numbered. The kingdom that had once stretched across thousands of miles was now a shadow of its former self, broken by war and conquest.
The fall of the Inca Empire offers lessons that extend beyond the Andes.
It shows how internal strife can weaken even the strongest nations, making them easy targets for external forces. The civil war between Huáscar and Atahualpa was not just a battle for power, it was a failure to find common ground when unity was most needed. Throughout history, similar conflicts have played out in different corners of the world, proving that divisions within a society can be more destructive than any enemy from outside. The Inca story serves as a reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition, the fragility of empires, and the importance of leadership that prioritizes peace over personal gain. As scholars study the past, they uncover not only what happened, but why it happened, and what can be learned from it. While the names of Huáscar and Atahualpa echo through history, countless others played crucial roles in the Civil War, figures whose contributions are often overlooked. Among them was Tupac Hualpa, a half-brother of the warring siblings whose support for Atahualpa proved vital in securing key alliances. Then there was Rumiñahui, a fierce general who defended Quito against Huáscar's forces and later resisted Spanish occupation with unmatched determination. Even women shaped the course of events. Mama Anahuarqui, a respected priestess and advisor, warned of omens that foretold destruction, urging the brothers to seek peace. Yet their ears were deaf to such wisdom. These figures, though overshadowed by the main protagonists, remind us that history is not written by kings alone. Every war has its unsung heroes and tragic victims, and the Inca Civil War was no exception. The consequences of the Inca Civil War rippled far beyond the Andes. The devastation left by the conflict made it easier for the Spaniards to impose control, reshaping the political landscape of South America. In time, colonial rule gave way to independence movements, and the descendants of both the Inca and the Spanish forged new nations. The scars of the past did not disappear, but they evolved into something else, memories woven into the fabric of modern identity. Today, the ruins of Machu Picchu, Sacsayhuaman, and Vilcabamba stand as monuments to a lost world, drawing visitors from across the globe. Historians continue to uncover the complexities of the Civil War, piecing together its impact on indigenous resistance, cultural preservation, and the broader narrative of colonialism. The war may have ended centuries ago, but its influence endures, shaping the way we understand history, power, and the fragile nature of empire. To understand the Inca Civil War, we must first understand the unique system of succession that governed the empire. Unlike European monarchies, where the eldest son typically inherited the throne, the Inca followed a different model. The new emperor was chosen not only based on lineage, but also on merit, military prowess, and political alliances. The Sapa Inca's principal wife, known as the Coya, was often from Cusco, and her sons were considered the most legitimate heirs. However, the emperor could also have children with women from other regions, and these sons could rise to prominence if they proved themselves capable leaders. When Emperor Huayna Capac died around 1527, likely from smallpox brought by earlier Spanish explorers, he left behind a vast empire and no clear successor. His death created a power vacuum. Two of his sons emerged as contenders, Huáscar, born to the Coya, and Atahualpa, born to a noblewoman from Quito, a northern province recently conquered and settled by the Inca. Huáscar claimed the throne by right of birth, arguing that, as the son of the Coya, he was the rightful heir. He was crowned in Cusco, the spiritual and political heart of the empire. Atahualpa, however, refused to recognize his brother's authority. He had spent much of his life in the north, where he had gained the loyalty of powerful generals and local rulers. When Huáscar sent envoys demanding submission, Atahualpa ignored them. What began as a dispute between brothers soon escalated into a full-scale civil war. Each gathered allies, raised armies, and prepared for battle. The empire,
which had once been held together by strict laws and a centralized government, now found itself split down the middle. The stage was set for a conflict that would change the course of history, not just for the Inca, but for all of South America. Huáscar was the elder of the two brothers, though not by much. Born to the Coya Mama Rahua Oclo, he was raised in Cusco with all the privileges of royal birth. He was educated in the traditional ways, trained in statecraft, religion, and diplomacy. He believed deeply in the sacred nature of kingship and saw himself as the rightful ruler of the empire. Huáscar was known for his intelligence and charisma, but also for his impatience and temper. He expected obedience from all and reacted harshly to defiance. At the start of the war, he controlled the south half of the empire, including Cusco, Arequipa, and Lake Titicaca. His army was large but not as well trained or disciplined as Atahualpa's. He relied heavily on the nobility of Cusco, many of whom were untested in real combat. Atahualpa, though younger, was arguably more experienced in warfare. Raised in Quito, he grew up among soldiers and administrators who had helped his father conquer the northern territories. He was a skilled commander, known for his ability to inspire loyalty among his troops. Unlike Huáscar, he did not rely solely on noble support. Instead, he built a coalition of regional leaders, warriors, and common soldiers who saw him as a leader who understood their struggles. His closest advisors included Chalcuchimac, a seasoned general who had fought alongside Huayna Capac, and Quisquis, a brilliant tactician who led many of Atahualpa's key campaigns. These men would prove instrumental in turning the tide of the war. Mama Anahuarqui, a respected priestess and advisor to both brothers, warned them of omens and urged peace, but neither listened. Tupac Hualpa, a half-brother of Huáscar and Atahualpa, who initially supported Atahualpa before switching sides. Rumiñahui, a fierce general loyal to Atahualpa, who defended Quito against Huáscar's forces and later resisted Spanish occupation with unmatched determination. Quisquis, one of Atahualpa's top commanders, known for his brutal efficiency in battle. These individuals played critical roles in shaping the course of the war. Their decisions, alliances, and betrayals would determine whether the empire remained intact or fell into ruin.
The war began with a series of skirmishes along the borderlands between Cusco and Quito. Huáscar, eager to assert his authority, launched an invasion into the northern provinces. His goal was to capture Quito and force Atahualpa to submit. However, Atahualpa's forces were ready. Under the command of Rumiñahui, the northern army ambushed Huáscar's troops near Tumebamba, a city strategically located between the two rival kingdoms. The Battle of Tumebamba was brutal. Fires raged through the streets as both sides fought house to house. Rumiñahui used guerrilla tactics to great effect, striking quickly and retreating before Huáscar's larger army could respond. Eventually, the city was destroyed and both sides suffered heavy losses. Though Huáscar claimed victory, it was a hollow one. His forces were weakened and morale was low. Meanwhile, Atahualpa took advantage of the chaos. He moved southward, capturing key cities such as Cajamarca and Huánuco. His generals, particularly Quisquis, proved adept at siege warfare and psychological intimidation. Many towns surrendered without a fight, fearing the wrath of Atahualpa's army advancing. By 1531, the balance of power had shifted. Atahualpa was no longer just a challenger. He was a serious contender for the throne. The war was far from over, but the momentum was clearly with the northern faction. Several decisive battles changed the course of the conflict. Atahualpa's forces, led by Quisquis, defeated Huáscar's army in a major engagement near the Chimborazo volcano. This victory marked a turning point. Huáscar lost not only territory, but also crucial supplies and manpower. After months of maneuvering, Atahualpa finally laid siege to Cusco. The city, long thought to be impenetrable, was weakened by internal dissent and lack of food. After weeks of fighting, the defenders surrendered. Huáscar was captured and taken prisoner. Rather than keep his brother alive as a bargaining chip, Atahualpa ordered Huáscar's execution. Some sources say he was drowned in the Mantaro River. Others claim he was strangled. Either way, his death eliminated any hope of reconciliation. With Huáscar gone, Atahualpa declared himself sole emperor. But his triumph was short-lived. Just weeks later, news arrived of strange ships appearing off the coast, and with them came men dressed in metal armor, wielding weapons unlike anything the Inca had ever seen. Francisco Pizarro and his small band of conquistadores had been watching the Inca Empire closely. They knew of the civil war and understood that the empire was weak and divided. With Huáscar dead and Atahualpa newly victorious, the timing seemed perfect for conquest. Pizarro arranged a meeting with Atahualpa under the pretense of peaceful negotiations. On November 16, 1932, the two leaders met in the town of Cajamarca. Atahualpa arrived with thousands of unarmed attendants, believing the meeting would be ceremonial. Instead, Pizarro sprang a deadly trap. The Spaniards attacked without warning, using horses, firearms, and steel swords to devastating effect. The Inca were unprepared for this kind of warfare. Within minutes, thousands were killed or wounded. Atahualpa himself was captured and imprisoned. Despite his capture, resistance continued. Some Inca generals, like Rumiñahui and Quisquis, refused to surrender and waged a bitter guerrilla campaign in the mountains. Others tried to negotiate with the Spaniards, hoping to preserve what remained of their culture. But the empire was already broken. Without strong leadership, it could not withstand the onslaught. Within a few years, the last remnants of independent Inca rule were crushed. The consequences of the Inca Civil War were profound. Weakened military, years of internal conflict drained resources and morale, making it easier for the Spaniards to conquer the empire. Loss of leadership. The execution of Huáscar and Atahualpa removed two of the most capable rulers the Inca had ever produced. Cultural suppression. The Spanish imposed their language, religion, and customs, leading to the decline of indigenous traditions. Colonial rule. The Inca Empire was replaced by Spanish colonies, and the region became part of the Viceroyalty of Peru. Yet, despite centuries of colonization, the legacy of the Inca endures. Their descendants continue to live in the Andes, speaking Quechua and practicing ancient customs. Archaeologists uncover new ruins every year, revealing the sophistication of the Inca engineering and agriculture. Modern historians now view the Civil War not just as a tragic event, but as a cautionary tale about the dangers of division. Had the Inca remained united, they might have stood a better chance against the Spaniards. Instead, their internal strife made them vulnerable to conquest. Disease played a role. Smallpox and other diseases introduced by Europeans may have weakened the empire before the war even began. Women were involved. Women, like Mama Anahuarqui, acted as advisors and spiritual guides during the conflict. Alliances changed quickly. Some provinces switched sides multiple times depending on who offered better protection or resources. Not all fought. Many communities tried to remain neutral, avoiding direct involvement in the war. Prophecies influenced decisions. Both Huáscar and Atahualpa consulted priests and oracles who interpreted omens and dreams to guide their actions. Though the Inca Empire vanished, its achievements remain etched in stone. The precision of their architecture, the vastness of their road networks, and the sophistication of their agricultural terraces speak to a civilization that mastered the challenges of the Andes. Even without written records, the Inca preserved their knowledge through oral tradition, quipus, knotted strings used for record-keeping, and the enduring presence of their cities. Modern archaeologists continue to uncover new insights into their way of life, revealing how deeply connected they were to the land and the cosmos. The Civil War disrupted this harmony, but it did not erase it. Instead, it became part of a larger story, one of resilience, adaptation, and survival. As researchers dig deeper into the past, they find that the Inca were not merely victims of conquest, but a people whose influence continues to shape the Andean world. History is more than dates and battles. It is the memory of a people passed down through generations. In the highlands of Peru, Ecuador, and Bolivia, descendants of the Inca keep their ancestors' stories alive through festivals, songs, and rituals. The Quechua language, once spoken in the royal courts of Cusco, remains a living testament to the empire's endurance. Even as Spanish became the dominant tongue, Quechua survived, whispered in homes and markets, carried in the rhythms of daily life. The Civil War may have divided a kingdom, but it could not erase a culture. The traditions of the Inca persist, woven into the fabric of modern Andean identity. In every stone temple, every festival honoring the sun, and every tale told by elders, the spirit of the empire lives on. The past is not lost, it is remembered, honored, and reimagined by those who refuse to let it fade. The story of the Inca Civil War does not end with the fall of the empire. It continues in the ongoing search for truth, in the efforts of historians and archaeologists who piece together fragments of the past. New discoveries challenge old assumptions, offering fresh perspectives on the conflict and its aftermath. Did Huáscar truly deserve the throne? Could Atahualpa have ruled differently if given more time? Were the Spaniards inevitable conquerors, or did the Civil War create an opening they simply exploited? These questions drive research forward, ensuring that the voices of the past are never silenced. As technology advances, ancient sites reveal hidden secrets, buried artifacts, forgotten texts, and long-lost structures waiting to be uncovered. The road ahead is long, but with each step, we draw closer to understanding the full scope of what was lost and what endures. The story of the Inca Civil War is one of ambition, betrayal, and tragedy. It reminds us that even the strongest nations can fall when they are divided from within. The Inca were a people of remarkable achievement, builders of cities, engineers of roads, and masters of agriculture. Yet their greatest weakness was not their enemies, but their inability to resolve their differences peacefully. As we look back on this chapter of history, we are reminded that unity is strength. The lessons of the past still speak to us today, urging us to seek cooperation over conflict, understanding over division, and peace over war. The Inca Empire may have fallen, but its spirit lives on. In the mountains, in the stories, and in the hearts of those who remember.